Peaceful Patty, and every day I'm going to read you a story, and after my story we'll go to my friend Bible Betty, who will tell you a little bit more about what that story means. Our book that we'll be reading is called The Biggest Story: How the Snake Crusher Brings Us Back to the Garden. Chapter 1. Once upon a time, there lived a man and a woman. They were the happiest people on the planet. True, they were the only people on the planet, but they were still terrifically happy. Their names were Adam and Eve, and God made them. He made them in His image, little mirrors to reflect God's glory. And like everything else God made, He made them good. It was a wonderful time to be God's children in God's wonderful world. Unfortunately, things didn't stay happy and wonderful for long. On one very bad day, Adam ate from the only tree God had declared off limits. Adam failed. It was a terrible day, the second worst day in the history of the world. A snake had tricked Adam and Eve and told them a lie about the fruit. He said they would be like God if they ate it, but actually the opposite was true. When they ate the fruit, they found themselves far away from God. They had disobeyed God's word and believed the lie of that devilish snake instead of the truth. Being near to God and having Him draw near to us would not be easy any longer. God was not happy with Adam and Eve. He wasn't happy with the snake either. God put a curse on the man and the woman and the snake and everything else. He kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden paradise He had made for them. It wasn't possible for a people who were so bad to live with a God who was so good. They had to go. But before they left, God made a promise. He promised that the evil serpent, the devil, would always be at war with Eve and her children. Now that doesn't sound like a very nice promise, that bad guys and good guys would fight all the time. Who wants to be in a war that never ends? But here's where the good part of the promise comes in. God promised that one of Eve's children would someday, eventually, sooner or later, crush the head of that nasty snake. Nobody knew when or how, but she would have a child to put things right. And that is the end of chapter 1. We're going to go to Bible Betty to hear more about that story.
Thanks, Peaceful Patty. I'm Bible Betty, and I'm going to help us better understand the biggest story and how the snake brings us back to the garden. Each and every one of us are part of the big story, and our story today, it starts in the garden, where there was no sin, and Adam and Eve lived with God, and everything was perfect. But because of their sin, Adam and Eve could no longer live in the garden, and God, He had made a promise that He would always be at war with the snake, the devil, and evil. Yet, however, He had also promised that one day, one of Eve's children would crush the snake and bring us back to the garden. This is God's start to redemption, and redemption is God's plan to save us from sin and evil. All were welcome into this garden, but because of Adam and Eve's sin and the snake's deceit, everyone was excluded. We'll see you next time for chapter 2.